Hey everybody, Dave here, back on the 99 FourTrax 300 quad. And it's been a couple of weeks, but I finally got some parts in and I'm going to address the rear brakes. So let's go take a look at what I have for parts. Okay, so I bought brake shoes that came as a set, and then I got a bearing and seal kit. Came with a bearing, a couple of seals, and some O-rings. And we're going to install all these parts on our rear brake and see if we can get some stopping action going. Alright, so before I get in here and just start tearing things apart, I'd like to get a plan together, see what I'm up against. It looks like I'm going to pull that cotter pin off right here with that washer. And then those brakes will just pop right out, no problem. I think the bearing is pressed into this outer cover right here. So I think I'm going to have to remove that to get the bearing out. So I'm going to remove this brake arm here and the 1-2 nuts there, and there's 2 more on the bottom. And I think with those cables removed and the 4 nuts removed, I should be able to remove this whole housing, get it off of there, and take a look at what we got at that point. Alright, so the first thing I want to do is remove this washer so I don't have to spread the brake pads up and over and around it. And, you know, it's going to have to come off anyway. Like that. And the washer like that. Alright, let's see if we can just pop these drums off. Or these shoes, rather. There we go. Okay, hub. Alright, we'll clean this hub up as well, and we'll get some fresh grease on there so that'll slide on and off much easier. Alright, next thing I want to disconnect are the cables. They come off with these wing nuts. The whole cable wants to kind of spin, so I'll lock onto that nut there, and then we'll just back this thing off. And we'll keep these assembled so we don't lose anything. And we don't have to keep track of as much stuff. Alright, now I got to remove the cable and out. Alright, got to remove this vent hose. I'm replacing these. These are shot. Okay, now I'm going to take the 4 nuts off to separate this braking plate from the rear end housing. This is 14 mil. Yeah, buddy. Alright, that cleaned up nice, so I'm happy to see that. So that's good. Our work over at this end is done. Now let's go take a look at that brake backing plate that we removed and see what we got to do on that. Okay, so looking through the service manual, this is called a brake panel, so I'll call it a brake panel. And I'm going to remove this O-ring here. Looks to be in great shape. This bearing, by the way, is also in great shape. Nothing at all wrong with it. Of course, I don't know that because I just got this thing and it's 22 years old. But I suspect someone may have already replaced it once, but I feel obligated to replace it now since the name of this video is replacing the wheel bearing and brakes. So I'm going to replace it anyway. And so next I want to remove this lever. I don't know. Okay. I was going to make a mark, you know, like that, but I see a dot here and I see a dot here. I don't know if that's why they're there, but that's what I'm going to use them for. So I'm going to remove this leg and then this lever, and then I can put it back in the same exact tooth. So I've got the right adjustment for the throw. Okay, and these are the trusty old 10 mil. Got it in reverse. Okay, that comes off. Hopefully it will come up pretty easily. And it does. Other side past the teeth. There we go. Set that aside. We've got this little, I don't know what this is. I'm not sure what it does. Looks like I have a break in the teeth here. Like a missing tooth. And then this thing also has a flat spot as a missing tooth, so that's indexed for some reason. And then this spring, tell you what, I'm not going to take it off at this point. It's not in my way, it's not bothering me. But I do have in here, what do we got in here? We have a felt seal. Okay, let's try to remember how these come off. There's another seal. So I have a felt seal and I've got 2 round seals in the kit that look like they're this size. So there may be a seal on each side of this thing. I'm not sure yet. Well, let's find out. So this comes out. This looks pretty clean. Okay, here's this seal. This seal will come right out of here. I have a new one. There we go. So that seal comes out. Notice the way it went in. The cupped side was in. So I'll just put that aside, face down. And I would imagine there's another seal over on this side. And the cupped face on the inward. So that comes off again. Cupped face going in. So I've got these 2 seals and that felt seal in my kit. I've also got this seal here. So I can get this out, hopefully, without shooting it across the room. This baby's stubborn. There we go. There we go. Alright. Throw this thing in the trash right now. Alright, I think I've got a plan to press this bearing out. It's got to come out this direction. I've got to push it through here. So I'm looking around the shop here. I've got this old bearing race that just happens to be a perfect fit inside here. It doesn't rest on this shoulder. It rests on the outer race of this bearing, which is what I really ideally want to push out on. So it's pushing out on the outer race of the bearing. And then on this side, I'm going to put this here to give a cavity to push it up through. Oops. With this on it. So this is going to allow the bearing to come into here. And we're going to push on it from here. So it's going to look something like this. I want more threads on there, so let me spin it on this way. So now as I tighten on this, it's going to pull this bolt through. The bolt is going to push the old bearing race that I have. And then it should come right out like nothing. Piece of cake, right? Well, We'll see. Okay, so everybody's in an agreement that this is going to work. The only problem is that I can't see if the bearing's moving. I mean, this is an aluminum part, which I don't want to break. I don't even need an impact wrench, but I'm going to use one just because it's easier. I had my impact gun on low because I want to know if something's bottoming out and not working. But there we go. Alright. That worked out beautiful. Okay, now I got the bearing out. I'm going to clean this up a little bit. What else we got? We've got an O-ring in here. I see we got a new one of these in the kit, but I'm just going to be careful just in case it's the incorrect one. That's never happened before, but let's pick this out of here so we can reuse it in case the new one doesn't fit. Because this also seems to be in pretty decent shape. Let's see if I can get that spring out. Well, first I'm going to spray it with my favorite penetrant. Alright, I'm going to have to introduce a little heat to this thing, see if we can't get it off. I don't want to break it. And it's moving. There we go. Bam. Alright. Okay, here I am. I got things all cleaned up here. This came out really nice. Put it in my glass bead cabinet. Nice and clean, relatively speaking. Cleaned up everything else that goes in here. The spring, the lever. Looks really nice. Now I gotta assemble this thing. So, got a brand new bearing. Gonna press it in to the center of this, and we're just gonna do it the opposite of how it came out. So this goes in here. The race that I had, which fit perfectly around the outer race of this bearing, but yet slid inside. I'm going to put that on top of there. Washer on there. And that goes like that. So you can see how that's going to pull everything inside there. And then on this side, I don't even need a cup on this side, but I'm going to use one anyway. And they go something like that. I'm going to put a washer on here as well. So get everything centered. we can watch it this way. Look inside there to make sure it's not going too deep. That looks perfect right there. Turns nice and smooth. It's in there. At almost the right depth. I'm not sure why there's not a stop or something on this. I think perhaps, and I'll look closely at it on the bike, I think that when I sock down that axle nut, it'll self-center this thing. But, okay, so the bearing is in. Okay, now everything's clean, got the bearing in there. I'm going to start assembling this unit, starting with the brake cam. It's got a couple of seals that go with it. Remember, I took these off. These were the cupped side down. And to aid in the installation of this thing, I'm going to use a little bit of grease just to get these to slide in better and easier. And a little grease in here. Let's see now if we can push this seal in. That slides in nice like that. Wipe off any excess. I also want to lubricate this a bit, just to stop any rust or corrosion from setting in. And of course this seal is probably going to wipe off. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to try something else. Get this seal out. I'm going to put it on the shaft first. See how it wiped all the grease off? So I'll put that in. Now I can lubricate this shaft a bit. And when I put it in there, the seal's not going to wipe it clean again. So let's do that. And I'll put this in and see if we can't set that seal using the cam itself. Which may be easier said than done. Perhaps I can move the seal away. And set it in first by hand. Okay, so now I've got the seal in there, and it didn't wipe all this grease off of this shaft, so now we've got the seal in there, and we've also have grease inside there, which is important. Now I'm going to wipe off any excess grease around the edges. that. Okay, so now we have this gliding nice. We got grease in there. And now this side also has a seal. I want to apply some grease on it as well. Get this lip, there we go. Pack any grease behind that seal because it'll stop it from sinking down in there deep. So I got the grease out, slid that down there, and now this ought to be able to slide in place and stay because now there's room for it. Okay, and so now that looks like that. Now I'm going to put the spring on, the return spring. This leg goes into the hole here. Like that. And the lever, remember we've got a notch here on the shaft and a little indent here on the lever, and these have to line up. And the notch has to be towards the outside. So now okay, so now I've got the notch in the arm, the lever, and a notch in the shaft. Make sure they line up. So now we've got the right angle for braking. I'm going to get this spring. There we go. We'll just tuck it in behind there. So now we've got the return spring working. So that all looks good. That goes there, that goes there. Sock it down. There we go. Everything's nice and smooth. Should be protected from water. So we got that done. That's taken care of. Ah! Forgot this little indicator washer. Alright, not a big deal. Okay, so now we've got, this is a little indicator arm right here. And if you look, there's an arrow on the casting here of this brake plate. So just at a glance, you can look at this to see how far this arm is swinging and know how much brake pad you've got left. Once it gets beyond this little arrow, it's time to change your brake pads. So that's in place now as well. Okay, next thing I've got a seal that goes in here, like that. I'm going to lubricate the outside of this seal so I can get it to glide in nice and easy without distorting it or damaging it. Nice little bit of grease there. And that slides in like that. Okay, that looks good. We're going to flip it over. We've got this seal that goes in here. I'm going to just fill this channel with some grease for a couple reasons. One, to hold the gasket in place, the O-ring. And number two, provide a little bit more protection from moisture. If anything tends to squeak by that seal for whatever reason, this grease should slow it down from getting, inside the brakes. I'm going to drop this O-ring in here. Okay, so I think this is all assembled now. We can take this over to the bike. Okay, back over here at the bike. We'll just give this another little wipe down. Okay, this big step up here, this is where the seal that we installed on the brake backing plate is going to slide onto and prevent any moisture from getting inside the axle tube. So that's nice and clean. We got a brand new seal going over it. Okay, getting ready to install the rear brake panel. And how this works is we've got this outer step here on the panel. That outer step is going over the outside of this flange here. And then the inner race of the bearing is going to butt up against this face of the axle. And the bearing's actually going to ride on this shoulder right here. Is going to ride inside on the bearing. So let's slide this in place. Okay, and so here we go. Okay, and I want to seat this brake panel with the outer flange on the frame. I don't want to just sock the nuts down because it could go crooked and I don't know if it's going bad. So I'm just going to use a soft hammer and try to tap it in place. There. Okay, now it's locked in place. And now I can tighten up these nuts on the back side without any problems. Alright, now we're going to tighten down these nuts in the back. 3, 4. Alright, next step is to install the brake shoes. Trying not to touch the linings at all. Okay, so that works like that. You know what, I think I'm going to put a little bit of brake lubricant right on this little cam. Alright, so let me put a little bit of brake grease on this cam. Alright, I like that. Wipe off the excess. Alright, directing my attention to the drum shoe now. This thing looks like, muddy water got inside here. I've got all new seals in here now, so hopefully we're going to keep the water out. Any water that gets in is trapped and it won't drain out. So we want to try to keep all the water and the mud out. And with our all new seals, we should be able to do that. So let me clean this up. There's the before. We'll show you what it looks like after I clean it. Alright, here we are after a few minutes of cleanup in the blast cabinet. Look at that. Very nice. Took a couple extra minutes to clean up these surfaces where our new seals are going to ride. That's this step right here. Cleaned it up with a little emery cloth. Try to get it nice and smooth. And also this outside flange where the outside seal is going to ride on. Clean that up a little bit. I mean, it's not perfect condition, but it's going to have to do. But the braking surfaces look nice with our new pads, our new shoes. This thing should work just fine. Okay, here I am back at the bike. I'm going to slide this drum on there. This drum is going over the axle. It's going to spline to the axle. So this is going to rotate when the bike is moving. The brakes stay stationary. I've got a brand new seal here that's going to ride on this shoulder right here. So let me just put a thin film of grease so it will slide over that seal no problem and not deform it in any way. Again, we don't want to be very, we just want to get a little film on here just so that rubber seal will slide over this shoulder. That's it right there. Also, going to put some grease on these splines to keep these nice and clean. I'm not going crazy here. Just a light film of grease. And now I'm going to slide. I'm going to slide the drum on here. And I'm going to push it past that seal until it seats fully. Alright, so now it's splined. Now it's up against the seal perhaps. And now it's on. Okay. Okay, the next thing I'm going to address is the cover for this whole brake. I'm going to pull this seal out. I've got a brand new seal for it. There we go. Okay, so I finished cleaning this up in the blast cabinet. It came out beautiful. The inside, didn't spend a ton of time in there, but I knocked off any kind of loose stuff and it's nice and clean. But wanted to take extra time and make sure I get this outer step nice and clean. Because this is where the O-ring in the brake panel, there's an O-ring on the outside, and when this cover goes over, that O-ring is going to seat on this first step. So I wanted to spend some extra time and make sure it's nice and clean, and we'll get a good seal. So I have a good seal on the outside. We'll put a new seal on the inside, and it should stay nice and dry in there, or as dry as one can expect when you submerge the thing for extended periods of time. But I am going to paint this and make it look kind of nice. We'll give it a can of semi-gloss black, and then we'll start to assemble it. Alright, I think before I paint this, I want to put this seal in here. I don't want to paint inside here and put a layer of paint so that this won't slide in very well. So So I'm going to put this in prior to painting. It's going to go just like that. And I'm going to lubricate this outside edge so it kind of slides in. Or maybe I'll just lubricate this inner side. Just a thin film just to aid it so it's not scrubbing as I push it in, it's more sliding. There we go. I mean, it'll be nice. I'm going to try to push this in by hand with my fingers. If it won't go in, we'll come up with something. So let's try first if we can just gently push this in place with the help of the grease. Bearing press that fits perfectly over the outside lip of it. So let me just try. I think that is in beautifully. I want to wipe the grease off so when I paint it, it paints up nice. And I want to wipe this grease off with some brake cleaner so when I go to paint it, the paint adheres nicely and doesn't have this grease to ruin the paint job. Alright, look at that, that's beautiful. Alright, and now we'll paint it up, get it to look nice before we put it on, because everybody sees this. Alright, so here we are all painted up, and this thing looks fantastic. Look at this thing. Looks like it's brand new. Of course it isn't brand new, we've got dents and dings in it because this bike is missing this brake guard. Big metal plate, kind of a scuff guard, which I've ordered one, and when it comes in I'll put it on, just an added protection without a protective guard. I mean, this is the first thing that's going to hit, you know, the log or the rock you're climbing over. And we've got the brake drum spinning around in here really fast, so if you put a big enough dent in this thing, it'll start hitting the brake drum and then you'll have problems. But this looks nice. Let's go put it on the bike. Okay, here we are back at the bike now. We're going to put this thing in. This thing looks beautiful. It's going to go over like this and cover up the entire brake. And when I first took this apart, there was all kinds of mud and water in here. It was pretty gross. So that's why it wasn't working. So I want to keep as much water as I can. I want to keep all the water out of this area that I can. And so we've got new seals on it to keep water from getting in here. And this whole cover goes over. There's a channel in this outside edge that an O-ring sits in. So an O-ring will sit in here. I'll put it on. And then when I slide this cover in, this outside lip is going to squeeze that O-ring for a watertight seal. So before I just put this O-ring on, I'm just going to put a little bit of grease, fill this whole channel with grease. I'm going to slide this O-ring on in the grease, put it in there. So now I'll get O-ring plus a little bit of grease. That should make for a nice watertight seal. Okay, so that's the little bit of grease that I'm going to put in here. I'm sure you probably don't have to do this, but I'm going to do it just because I think it adds a little extra layer of waterproofing. And then this O-ring goes in like that. Like that. And so all this grease that's on there is outside this cover, and it will not go into the brakes. Okay, now final assembly. I took this brake drum off to put the grease on that seal. Now I'm going to put this cover on. I just put another thin little layer of grease on that shoulder that's going to make contact with the new O-ring. So this goes on next. Just lubricate this sealing surface here lightly. So that our brand new seal will slide over it. Now we gotta get over the O-ring. And the grease probably helps in this too. Got to squish that O-ring down. There we go. Pinch it and tap it at the same time. So I'm squeezing it with my thumb and my hand while I'm hitting it. Okay. Alright, that's on. Alright, I'm happy with how tight that fit on there. And I think that's going to be pretty watertight. So this should last quite a while. And then the fasteners back in. And then a final hand torquing. Alright, next thing I want to slide on is this inner seal. Like that. And then the big washer that goes over will snug it in nice and square. Okay, next thing to go on is this big washer. Goes on like this. And this big seal here is going to ride right on this washer. Remember, the washer is going to be spinning with the axle. The seal is going to be stationary with the cover. So I'm going to put a little bit of grease on this rubber seal, so instead of scrubbing it, it'll be gliding over it nice and smoothly. Just like that. And so now it glides nice and smoothly. It won't be grabbing onto that rubber and stressing it and tearing it prematurely. Okay, the next thing is this washer goes on, and if you look, this is not really a flat washer. It's kind of coned, and I don't know if you can read it, but it says outside on this side. So this is going to be facing outside, so the outer edge of this washer is going to make contact first, and then the inner washer will be kind of coned outward. So that goes on like that. Alright, next thing to go on is the lock washer, and as always, clean everything up, make sure everything's nice and clean, wire brush it, wire brush the threads, We want these things to go on nice and smooth. Okay, now I don't know what the torque spec is for this thing, but I know it should be fairly tight. Again, we're locking up against the brake drum, which is going up against the bearing, which is going up against the step on the axle. So it's all metal between here and the axle. So I'm going to torque this down tight with a pipe wrench, same way I got it off. Alright, so I'm going to lock this pipe wrench against it. There we go. I think that just, actually, I just, from the feel of that, I think that just dead centered that bearing that I pressed in there that had no step to press up against. It was just the bearing in the middle of the backing plate. So that felt like it was just centering that bearing, and now it just locked up tight. So now I'm going to give this a couple taps with a hammer, and I'm not hitting this with a sledgehammer. This is just a framing hammer. I just want to get this tight. And I really think that's good enough. And now I'm going to put the jam nut on there. Again, nice and clean. And now we'll give this somewhat of a gentle jamming on there. A couple of taps. There, I think that's good. Okay, next thing I'm going to hook up these cables back again. We've got the bottom one is the foot pedal brake. And then the top one is the cable that goes up to the handlebar lever for the emergency brake. So let's get these in. Okay, so I'm all set here with this back brake. This came out awesome, I think. I didn't really understand how any of this worked before I took it apart. Now I understand the whole thing. I went through it. I've got a brand new bearing in it. I've got brand new brake shoes. I've resurfaced the brake drum with my glass bead cabinet. That came out beautiful. I've got all new seals. I've got fresh grease where it needs to be. I've got the whole thing all locked down now. I've got my cables on here with a good foot pedal action and a good emergency brake. So we're done with this rear brake on this. So I'm really pleased with how this came out. Hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. If so, subscribe to the channel, see more, and until next time, thanks for watching.